So the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services announced on July 12th that it is expanding the myProgress program. It's formerly known as the Personalized Processing Times to Form I-765 application for employment authorization, the I-131 application for a travel document. So what does myProgress do? myProgress provides applicants with access in their online account to personalized estimates of their wait time for major milestones on their cases, including their final case decision. Now, while estimates are based on historical patterns of cases with similar specifics, they are not a guarantee of speed, cannot take into consideration all possible unique application processing delays, and may over or underestimate the true processing time. It is an estimate. In addition to Form I-765 and Form I-131, the myProgress is available for applicants with USCIS online accounts who file for their citizenship, their application for naturalization, their Form I-90, which is their application to renew their green card, and the I-130 visa petition. To view estimated case timelines, applicants must first create a USCIS online account or log into their already existing account. There is great news for international students. The U.S. is expanding who is eligible to work in the United States in a job related to their studies. The Department of Homeland Security announced on July 12th that it would add 8 new fields of study to the STEM Optional Practical Training Program. Optional practical training allows students on an F1 visa to gain practical work experience in their area of study, either during or following the completion of their degree. Typically, the program allows students to work for 12 months, but students who have earned a degree in certain STEM fields can apply for a 24-month extension of their optional practical training. Now, in January 2022, the Biden administration expanded eligibility for science, technology, engineering, math, optional practical training, adding 22 qualifying fields of study. The Department of Homeland Security has since received nominations for an additional 120 fields of study to be added to the list, of which they chose a total of 8. So these are the 8 fields of study that have been added to the STEM designated degree program list: landscape architects, institutional research, mechatronics, robotics, and automation engineering technology, composite materials technology, linguistics and computer science, developmental and adolescent psychology, geospatial intelligence, and demography and population studies. Over 111,700 Venezuelan immigrants in the United States were granted relief from temporary protected status in 2021. Last year, that status was extended for those who qualified and will expire on March 10th, 2024. But in a letter addressed to President Biden on July 6th, Legal Aid Society's Immigration Law Unit, along with other advocates and organizations, noted that relief is still needed for those who arrived from Venezuela after March 9th, 2021. The number of immigrants from Venezuela arriving in the United States has more than doubled since 2021. Data from U.S. Customs and Border Protection shows that in the U.S.-Mexico border alone, 48,600 Venezuelans were encountered in 2021. Advocates and immigration law experts have said it's important to expand TPS coverage for Venezuelan immigrants who arrived after that date, March 9th, 2021, because while they await their asylum case proceedings, TPS will give them immediate protection. Now, a lot of existing legal providers who are representing asylum seekers in immigration court are at capacity right now. One attorney alone may need to invest hundreds of hours to adequately handle comprehensive legal representation of an individual in immigration court. But don't worry, our office can handle it. Deborah Lee, an attorney in Chicago at the Legal Aid Society's Immigration Law Unit, documented that the application for temporary protected status in comparison could be relatively straightforward. Lee said, I think that instead of viewing it simply as we're pro-immigrant or anti-immigrant or whatever the perspective is, if people can also think about, well, okay, how can people contribute? How can they get work permits? They're here already. Let them work. According to a June 28th report by the Migration Policy Institute, state governments across the United States on both sides of the political aisle are acting on immigration. At the vanguard of this activism are, of course, Florida and Texas, which have enacted laws this year intended to discourage the presence of unauthorized immigrants. And we've talked about that a lot. But these new restrictions are only one side of the coin. In contrast, Minnesota, Utah, and other states have provided various rights and protections to unauthorized immigrants and recipients of quasi-legal status under the Temporary Protected Status and Deferred Action for Childhood Arrival programs, which offer work authorization and protection from deportation. And these state expansions include access to driver's licenses, public benefits, professional certificates. As we have discussed 2 weeks before announcing his presidential campaign in May, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed a far-reaching law restricting the rights and mobility of unauthorized immigrants. And this law comes as Florida receives a disproportionate share of migrants entering through the United States-Mexico border. Now, following a special legislative session called by Governor Greg Abbott of Texas, Texas has also enacted 6 laws in June focused on immigration and border security. Among those aspects, these laws include deputizing U.S. Border Patrol agents who can arrest people suspecting of violating state law, authorizing the governor to share border security intelligence and resources, allowing the Texas National Guard to use drones for monitoring the border, creating a training program for local law enforcement agents, designating Mexican drug cartels and gangs as foreign terrorist organizations, allocating funds to compensate farmers for property damage from border smuggling. And on Friday, July 7th, Governor Greg Abbott announced that Texas is installing its marine barrier installation as part of its efforts to stop illegal immigration across the U.S.-Mexico border. However, with all that bad news, recent months have also seen new laws expanding the rights and benefits of unauthorized immigrants in other states. As part of a major push following Democratic takeover of its legislature this year, Minnesota created new college tuition support for all students in low-income families, regardless of immigration status. Lawmakers also made all residents eligible for driver's licenses, regardless of status. And Rhode Island and Massachusetts enacted similar policies. 19 states and Washington, D.C. now offer such licenses. And on July 1st, the Minnesota legislature passed a new law that reduces the maximum sentence for a gross misdemeanor from 1 year to 364 days. That 1 day could be a difference between an immigrant in Minnesota paying a fine and serving a short jail sentence and getting deported as an aggravated felony. Because if you are sentenced to 1 year in prison or more in most theft, fraud, or assault cases, you're getting deported as an aggravated felon. So now Minnesota changed the maximum sentence to 364 days. So all of those convictions would be crimes of moral turpitude. Voters in Arizona last year approved a similar proposition offering in-state tuition at public colleges and universities. This year, Maryland decided to offer healthcare occupational licenses to qualified unauthorized immigrants. Tennessee began allowing thousands of immigrants in quasi-legal status to obtain professional licenses. New Mexico passed a law this year increasing the age at which migrant children who have experienced parental abuse, abandonment, or neglect can apply for a special immigrant juvenile status from the age of 18 to 21. And California is in the process of expanding state-funded public health insurance for all immigrants ineligible for federal public insurance. So what we have here is a big dichotomy. Republican states making it more difficult for immigrants, Democratic states making it easier for them, and no federal government really doing anything because Congress and the president can't seem to get together to make any decisions on immigration. According to a June 28th report by the Migration Policy Institute, state governments across the United States on both sides of the political aisle are acting on immigration. At the vanguard of this activism are, of course, Florida and Texas, which have enacted laws this year intended to discourage the presence of unauthorized immigrants. And we've talked about that a lot. But these new restrictions are only one side of the coin. In contrast, Minnesota, Utah, and other states have provided various rights and protections to unauthorized immigrants and recipients of quasi-legal status under the Temporary Protected Status and Deferred Action for Childhood Arrival programs, which offer work authorization and protection from deportation. And these state expansions include access to driver's licenses, public benefits, professional certificates. As we have discussed 2 weeks before announcing his presidential campaign in May, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed a far-reaching law restricting the rights and mobility of unauthorized immigrants. And this law comes as Florida receives a disproportionate share of migrants entering through the United States-Mexico border. Now, following a special legislative session called by Governor Greg Abbott of Texas, Texas has also enacted 6 laws in June focused on immigration and border security. Among those aspects, these laws include deputizing U.S. Border Patrol agents who can arrest people suspecting of violating state law, authorizing the governor to share border security intelligence and resources, allowing the Texas National Guard to use drones for monitoring the border, creating a training program for local law enforcement agents, designating Mexican drug cartels and gangs as foreign terrorist organizations, allocating funds to compensate farmers for property damage from border smuggling. And on Friday, July 7th, Governor Greg Abbott announced that Texas is installing its marine barrier installation as part of its efforts to stop illegal immigration across the U.S.-Mexico border. However, with all that bad news, recent months have also seen new laws expanding the rights and benefits of unauthorized immigrants in other states. As part of a major push following Democratic takeover of its legislature this year, Minnesota created new college tuition support for all students in low-income families, regardless of immigration status. Lawmakers also made all residents eligible for driver's licenses, regardless of status. And Rhode Island and Massachusetts enacted similar policies. 19 states and Washington, D.C. now offer such licenses. And on July 1st, the Minnesota legislature passed a new law that reduces the maximum sentence for a gross misdemeanor from 1 year to 364 days. That 1 day could be a difference between an immigrant in Minnesota paying a fine and serving a short jail sentence and getting deported as an aggravated felony. Because if you are sentenced to 1 year in prison or more in most theft, fraud, or assault cases, you're getting deported as an aggravated felon. So now Minnesota changed the maximum sentence to 364 days. So all of those convictions would be crimes of moral turpitude. Voters in Arizona last year approved a similar proposition offering in-state tuition at public colleges and universities. This year, Maryland decided to offer healthcare, occupational licenses to qualified unauthorized immigrants. Tennessee began allowing thousands of immigrants in quasi-legal status to obtain professional licenses. New Mexico passed a law this year increasing the age at which migrant children who have experienced parental abuse, abandonment, or neglect can apply for a special immigrant juvenile status from the age of 18 to 21. And California is in the process of expanding state-funded public health insurance for all immigrants ineligible for federal public insurance. So what we have here is a big dichotomy. Republican states making it more difficult for immigrants, Democratic states making it easier for them, and no federal government really doing anything because Congress and the president can't seem to get together to make any decisions on immigration. Thanks for watching. For more Bradshaw Live, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.